Call to order the Finance Committee meeting for October the 18th, 2016. Item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of 10/4/2016.
Reviewing the minutes, are there any corrections?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we approve the minutes. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Item number 1 passed. Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments from 9/29/16 to 10/11/16.
Do we have a report from the Purchasing Committee?
The Purchasing Committee met earlier today, and we reviewed the report of claims with the City Treasurer, and I move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the claims. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Item number 2 passed. Item number 3, please.
Consider accepting low bid from Warfeather in the amount of $54,321 for PublicWorks metal building project or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, I'm going to ask David Garner, our street superintendent, to address you on this item, and I'll assist if you have any questions.
This is bidding, we bid out a while back. We got 3 bids. Warfeather is the cheapest on this. It's going to be a 40 by 60 building. It's going to have windows, commercial doors. It's going to have insulation inside the building. Basically, it's going to be a steel insulated building.
This building is for our street department. It is to replace a 20 by 20 structure that we currently have down there that we have used for the last almost 40 years that I've been aware of. It's a place where the employees go to warm themselves up in the winter, and sometimes they do actually eat lunch in there. It's not a very sanitary building. It needs to be torn down. There is no restroom facilities currently down there, and this building will have the plumbing to accommodate for a restroom facility. The plumbing is only stubbed out. You might explain that, Dave?
The building just won't have a rough-in plumbing. City crews will have to finish running the main sewer line up there, hooking up the water. The bathroom facilities and all that will be built by inside the city
Forces.
with the forces, yep.
We actually had this building on the budget cycle for several years, and we had bid it out several times, and it came in too high repeatedly. So we have scaled it back to pretty much of a shell of a building with the intent that we would use our forces and we would use future budgets to help buy material to shore up the inside of it, put walls up so that the insulation didn't get torn down, to help go ahead and construct the restroom and to finish the facility out. Even though this is a shell, this is still going to be a lot better than our employees have down there. And we intend to get the restrooms probably the first priority to get it done. So we do recommend approval, and Warfeather is a good company. They're the ones that are currently doing the Gateway project, very reputable. Adam Oglesby is as good a contractor as I've worked with. He's really conscientious, and we do recommend approval, and we'll answer any questions.
Move the approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this item. Any further discussion?
Yes, may I be recognized, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
On the plumbing, are you saying the city's going to do it?
Yes, we're going to just have this stubbed out of the building. I don't know if you remember, but when we ran the east side sewer line many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the line changed its path. It actually crosses now closer to our facility, so we're able to run a sewer line to it. In the past, we were going to have to go into the railroad, which meant getting a permit from the railroad, conduit for it to go in, and we just couldn't accomplish that. But now we do have a place that we can run the sewer to, so we intend to use the city water department to do the water. We intend to use the city sewer department to run the sewer line, and that's our intention.
So you don't have to get the inspection?
Gary and city crews do that. We won't need inspection, but I'll tell you what, Ivory, we probably will anyway, just to cover our bases because it is a new facility.
Because generally, on roughing in new plumbing period, you got to get an inspection.
We'll make
you got to
sure
have a license and.
Yeah, that's all included into the scope of work on the building.
Okay.
You know, the permits on that, the building, the rough-in plumbing, electrical is all in on the scope of work.
Okay. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I think this is a good solution to a challenge, and I appreciate everybody working together and all the different departments working together to make it better for city employees, making it come within budget. Thank you.
Thank you. That goes to David Garner and Billy Coffer. They worked together hard to get that accomplished.
Good solution.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Item number 3 passed. Item number 4, please.
Consider approval of change order number 1 to contract with Acura Neon Incorporated for the downtown wayfinding sign project in the amount of $8,766 for 3 additional signs or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, this is some changes that were needed to help with the direction down to the depot district. If you remember, there was a item on here a while back, and we got into discussion. The depot district was actually, when it was first talked about, was going to be down 4th Street was where the gateway was and where we were going to have the directional signage, and that really created the issue. Well, as this project moved forward and it actually moved over to 3rd Street, when the signage went up, we didn't catch a few things. And so this change order is to correct it. It's what we discussed at the depot meeting with the depot. This is to add 2 signs on Old Mulgy Street. One's right there by the Roxy, and one is west of City Hall on the south side, so that people will know they need to turn down 3rd. Prague has put a real quick PowerPoint together to show you, and he's going to explain that to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This, as Mike had alluded to you before, that these are the 2 locations which we have marked for sign 23 and 24. One, as he said, is by the Roxy, which is sign 23, and one is on the south side by Interstate Properties west of City Hall. That's sign 24. Sign 23 is going to be something like this. It's a small sign. It tells you where to turn on, I think, and that's what we had discussed with the depot district. They call them the breadcrumb signs. So it shows the turn left on South 3rd, and it also shows what actually is there. Like the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame is there, Muskogee Little Theater is there. It just opened up. I think the first performance they had was Mary Poppins. Three Rivers Museum is there. And this is sign 24, which shows, again, when you're coming from the other side, turn right on 3rd. Again, what consists of the depot district there. And this is a sign 4, which we had missed originally, and we had taken it down, and they have added it there. This is just by Park and Rec by North K Street, and that's the verbiage on it. Downtown, library, on right, sports complex. That's when you're coming from the east side to the west side of the city. The timeline, what we had discussed with Acura Neon is about 4 to 6 weeks. And once this goes, I think completion date, what we are looking at is for January 2017. Questions?
Prague, would you cover the money too?
Oh, yes. For the original project,
Notice.
thank you. For the original project, we had 155,678, and that money was from 60,000 was from the Chamber of Commerce, and the others were city funds. And what we did, we had divided that into phase 1 and phase 2. The reason why we did that was the phase 2 projects, phase 2 signs which were given to us by the Chamber of Commerce, they were out on the ODOT system. And according to ODOT, they always require some breakaway signs to keep the safety of the motorist in view. So what we did was we said, okay, by the time we are working out the breakaway issues, we wanted to do at least the ones which were in the city limits. Some of them are still on the city highway system, but they were within the speed limit, and we were just replacing the ones which were already there. The ones which were replaced in phase 1 were the ones which were the blue signs, and I think there were 12 of those which we replaced. So we didn't have any issues with ODOT there, and what we did was with this was to get with the depot district. Depot district gave us their guidance to work with that. Hey, we need to direct people to the depot district. We said, sure, why not? And that's where we came. And those are the 3 signs. So total, what we have done, we have paid to the contract for phase 1 is $80,964. change order with this is 8,766. We still have a balance left over of 65,948 for phase 2.
So can you go back, where was that sign number 4? I was trying to get myself oriented.
That's over on Okmulgee Street, right at Eastside Boulevard, and if you're going east, it was right there by that church.
Okay.
And there was an existing sign there, and this one was just not caught in the original list that was compiled. So this is to make sure that there's a sign that goes back up in that place. So this is replacing an existing sign.
I just didn't focus in real quick on where that was.
Right across the street from where the park department office is, really.
I got it now.
But in the westbound direction.
I got it. Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
All right, item 4 passed. Item number 5, please.
Receive a report and presentation on the Historic Preservation Commission CLG grant funded project, Muskogee's Colorful History Coloring Book.
Ms. Callahan.
Thank you, Commission members. The city was awarded grant funds to the Historic Preservation Commission from the Certified Local Government project, which is out of the State Historic Preservation Office. And with those funds, in last year's project, we did a coloring book project. And you have a few of them before you, and I probably should have put one up so that everyone could see, but we'll have it available on the website. What we do have plans for is to distribute to the Muskogee Public Schools 5th and 6th graders because of the reading in the book and the pictures. We thought that the older elementary or upper elementary would enjoy them more, but they're also, we feel like, an educational tool for adults too, because we say, why do we have coloring books and why about historic preservation? And we feel like it's the practice of protecting and preserving our site structures, districts, and significant individuals that reflect elements of local natural culture, social, economic, political, archaeological, and architectural history. And it fosters the civic beauty and community pride and the appreciation of local and national history. So what we're hoping to do is educate our future generation about our past generation and past structures and buildings that are in Muskogee. Really proud of the book and the way it's turned out. It was a little learning tool, but Jonita Mullins did an excellent job, and the State Historic Preservation Office signed off on it and was appreciative. We're real appreciative of her work, and we have it available, like I said, for the elementary schools, and we'll have it up ready to download from our website and have the remaining kind of scattered around for everyone to be able to take home if they'd like.
Tish, I got one. Was Hilldale School, knowing the budget, I know you only can do so many, was Hilldale
Right.
included in that, or just Muskogee?
Well, with the
Public Schools?
count that I had gotten from Muskogee, it would limit us of doing just 5th and 6th grade. What we may have to do, if they want Hilldale, then we may just do 6th grade and find out what the count was at Hilldale. And probably the reason I'm, just did Muskogee's count is because it's more of the inner
Downtown.
original town site kind of students. So,
Just
but
wondering.
it would be something that maybe on a second printing or even on the remaining of these to send them out to the school and to see if they'd be interested.
Okay.
Any more questions? We have a motion?
Any action necessary?
Don't need one.
No action.
No action. Okay.
Just enjoy your coloring books.
You didn't bring us any colored pencils.
I didn't, did I?
No. I wasn't gonna complain, but I
Yeah.
did.
No grant money for that.
No grant money for colored
Yeah.
pencils, all right.
All right, we received that report. Going to item number 6, please.
Consider approval of the final payment to Dirt Work Done Right LLC for the demolition contract, bid group number 37, in the amount of $923.16, or take other necessary action.
Ms. Callahan?
It's me again. This is our final payment and the contract closeout also for the CDBG 12 contract. This one was bid group 37, and the change needs to be made that it is $352.80 instead of the $923. Went back over some invoices. I thought that I had owed them some more retainage, but owe them less, and they're finalizing the contract. We had 27 properties for a total of $137,565.95. It averaged about $5,100 a structure. That was bid at the $2.45 a structure. So we've got those all completed and requesting final payment in the amount of $352.80 to Dirt Work Done Right, LLC. Answer any questions?
For approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
All right, how much did you say we owed?
$352.80.
Ms. Long?
No, that's, the agenda item was
I was wrong.
put in wrong.
Okay, I missed
Yeah.
that.
I submitted the agenda item before we
Okay, I'm just
finagled
making sure.
with the office staff there and
And-
myself, and
And we'll make the correction when it's on consent, if it passes unilaterally, before it's on consent agenda for Monday night.
I was drifting about the coloring pencils.
Roll call, please.
Sorry.
Deputy Mayor James Gully,
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
All right, item 6 passed. Item number 7, please.
Consider approval of lowest bid of a refuge truck for the waste research in the amount of $131,350 for the purchase of one Kenworth cab and chassis with a 20-yard rear loader pack more body for fiscal year 2016-2017, or take other necessary action.
All right, recognizing the gentleman from
From the garage.
the garage.
For those who don't remember my name is Jeff Lee. Robert's sick today, so I'm up here filling in for him a little bit. A little bit of information on the truck that we're looking at wanting to get. It's Kenworth. It's not a Freightliner like we've been used to in the last few years. I believe the Kenworth is a lot better built truck. It's a lot more durable. It's a lot more better built in general. Kind of like I was talking with Mike earlier, most of these trucks, one of the biggest problems we have, it's a repeat cycle, is knocking the doors off of them, knocking them off, wearing the doors out, wearing the hinge and hinges out, because they're only hinged in 2 places. This particular truck is built like the whole truck, but it's a piano hinge all the way up and down. It's a lot better, more durable truck. Years before in the past, they've always been outpriced because, again, just built more durable. And they're trying to get more competitive for what's out there, and they were within budget. They, I think it was $131,350 that was they bid on the truck. And my recommendation would be to go after the lower bid with Waste Research and get the Kenworth truck. And it also has the exact same motor that we run now in all the trucks, same transmission, so all of our software and everything else that we have now would not be a step up or anything else. It's all compatible.
Move the approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
All right, item 7 passed. Item number 8.
Consider the approval of David Ragsdale to the City Facilities Board to serve a 5-year term beginning on November 1st, 2016 and ending on October 31st, 2021, replacing Ivory Van, or take other necessary action.
Councilman Johnson.
I have an opening on the facilities board meeting, and I was at a trust board meeting, and Mr. Ragsdale had expressed interest, and I think he would serve very well on this facilities board meeting, and that is my recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
All right, item number 8 passed. Item number 9.
Consider approval of the appointment of Thomas Hampton to the War Memorial Trust Authority to serve a 3-year term beginning on November 1st, 2016 and ending on October 31st, 2019, replacing Brian Fortney, or take other necessary action.
This is one of my appointees. This is Mr. Hampton. Over 20 years in the U.S. Navy. I think he'd be a great person for this position after looking at his application. One thing I will point out is he's actually doesn't live in Muskogee, but we did do the research, and this board does qualify from someone outside the city. So this would be my recommendation for the War Memorial Trust.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Gully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Item number 9 passed, and that was our final item.
And we'll now call to order the Public Works Committee meeting. Item number 1, when you're ready, Pam.
Consider approval of the Public Works Committee minutes of October 4th, 2016.
Additions, changes, comments?
Move the approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 2.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of a resolution amending the land use map regarding property located on East Shawnee Avenue, replat of East Ridge Edition, more particularly described in the resolution, from multifamily residential district to transitional residential district, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the land use map of the city to reflect said change.
We are now in public hearing. Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant, Security Alarms, is requesting approval of a resolution amending the land use map from the multifamily residential classification to the transitional residential classification. The property is located on the north side of Shawnee Avenue, just east of Country Club Road. It's within East Ridge Edition. You can see on the map showing the location of Security Alarms office. It's the property surrounding the existing office. The reason for the amendment is the request to rezone the property from the C1 local commercial district to the R1 single-family district to allow one, maybe two single-family dwellings to be built on the property. Looking at the land use map, the flashing star is the location of the site, which is currently classified underneath the land use map as multifamily. To the east of the property, the blue area is shown as public property. It's some vacant land, plus you've got ICTC, and then farther on around is Connors College. To the west is also classified as multifamily. It's the location of Park Ridge residential development. It's 3 to 4 unit row house style development. West of it is the church. To the north, which is back behind the site, part of it is classified as public property. The other part is single-family residential. The public property is the backside of ICTC. The residential is the backside of some single-family dwellings within the Country Club Edition. And south, which is across Shawnee Avenue, the land use map indicates light industrial. As far as the current zoning in the area, there is a multitude of current zoning along Shawnee. There's some agricultural zoning. There's some PUD, planned unit development, R5, multifamily, C1, C2, and C3 commercial, which is your local, general, and regional commercial. So there's several different current zoning classifications within that area. The multifamily classification underneath the land use map will not allow for single family. Therefore, they do need to amend the land use map prior to the property being rezoned. There's 2 ways they could do it. They could amend it to single family, or they could amend it to transitional classification. But one or the other has to occur prior to the rezoning. Looking at the surrounding area, especially with Park Ridge to the west of the property, which is a 3 to 4 unit, again, row house style residential development. Back behind, abutting the Country Club area, we feel that the appropriate classification would be transitional, because transitional would allow for single-family zoning, duplexes, row houses, and townhouses. This item went before Planning Commission yesterday morning, and both staff and Planning Commission recommended approval of the resolution amending the land use map from multifamily to transitional. Be glad to answer any questions.
We had no one sign up to address this issue, so we're going to close the public hearing. Any discussion amongst the committee?
Move for approval.
Yep. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 3.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of an ordinance rezoning the property located within each Ridge Edition, 4,000 block of East Shawnee, more particularly described in the ordinance from C1 Local Commercial District to R1 Single Family District, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
We are now in the public hearing. Ms. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant, Security Arms, is requesting approval to rezone 6.6 acres from the C1 Local Commercial District to the R1 Single Family Residential District. The property is located within East Ridge Edition on Shawnee Avenue, same piece of property we just talked about on the land use map amendment. The reason for the rezoning is to allow the property to be developed residentially. Looking at the existing zoning land use within the area, starting with the site. Currently, the site is zoned C1 Local Commercial, and it's all undeveloped property around the Security Alarms existing business. North, which is back behind the property, is zoned public property, and it's an undeveloped area in between ICTC and single-family dwellings within Country Club Edition. South, which is across Shawnee Avenue, is zoned C1 and A agricultural, and it consists of a single-family dwelling and some undeveloped property. To the east is zoned A agricultural, and it's also undeveloped property. And to the west is zone PUD, planned unit development, and it's Park Ridge Edition, the 3 to 4 unit row houses I referred to earlier. We had one person call in prior to Planning Commission meeting who just had a couple of questions. Their questions was, one, they were concerned about drainage, which we informed them that drainage is addressed when the property is either platted or building permits issued. The second question they had was how many houses was going to be built. So I just kind of put on here to kind of show you that currently this property is divided up into 3 parcels. And where I've got parcel number 3 is the location of Security Arms. Parcel 1 is where the applicant wants to build his house. Parcel 2 is where a house may or may not be built in the future. So you're looking at 2 houses on the property. Now, as I stated before, the land use map does indicate multifamily. Therefore, this request does not comply with the land use map. And again, that land use map has to be amended prior to the rezoning being approved, which you just took action on previously. Staff and Planning Commission's recommended approval of the rezoning, subject to the land use map being amended. Be glad to answer any questions.
Again, no one signed up to address this issue, so we're going to close the public hearing. Any discussion or questions for Gary?
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston. Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 4.
Consider approval to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a professional services agreement with RMDS LLC to manage the design of the rebuild of Fire Station Number 5 located on North York Street, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, Chief Odell is ill today, and he was going to assist on this project and fill you in on some more of the details, but I'll do the best I can. I've got Terry Groom here, who is the person that we're trying to authorize the contract negotiations with. He's RMDS, which Terry and Bill Ricketts have been here for years and years. They were Ricketts Construction and are currently RMDS. They were RSB Engineers and Architects. I don't know if you looked in your packet, but they have put a team together that's with Holloway, Updike, and Bellin, who is a local engineering company. GFAC, which is a local for doing the testing and soils work. They've also reached out to Mass Architects, and I don't know if you remember, but Mass Architect is the one that designed and helped us build the airport terminal. We were very, very pleased with that project. They helped us design and build the Fire Training Command Center. So with the team that was assembled, we approached Manager Tucker and discussed the fact that we didn't feel like we needed to go out for a proposal because of the team that we had assembled, and because of the fact that Terry and Bill actually built the last 2 fire stations here in Muskogee that were built. So we felt like that was an appropriate team to put together to move forward with this, and Roy told us to go ahead and move it forward to the council's agenda to see if we could get approval to authorize the city manager to negotiate a contract. What you see before you is a list of the scope of work that will have to entail, and that's to provide a civil boundary survey, and I don't know if you looked in your packet, but we actually broke that down, who was going to do what, and kind of assigned that responsibility. But overall, this contract is we're going to be with RMDS. It's going to be their contract and their responsibility. These will be subs working under them, but they were just showing you who was going to be responsible for what portion of this design. And this is, by the way, just for the design of the station, not the construction, but simply the design, and that's going to be paid for out of the fire tax. Again, it's to provide a civil boundary of the survey, provide the topographical to facilitate the structural engineering designs. They're going to need those geotechs, so that's why they've got GFAC in there. They're going to help us develop a construction bid pack, provide as needed project management, crucial building and site inspections. They will be there when we need them. Terry, I don't know if you guys have ever worked with him, but he's a quality guy. And by the way, Prague has a very quick PowerPoint put together that he's going to show you, just to show you a little bit about the fire station that we're looking at replacing. And then Terry Grooms is here if there's questions for him as his company. And then we'll answer any questions as needed.
Good evening once again. This is the aerial of the old fire station number 5 on York Street. And this is what if you see those red lines where the arrow is going, that's where we want to, what Mr. Groom is suggesting, to put the new building in. And on the other side, if I can get this. Oops. What I did.
Technology gets you to.
Thank you, Prague.
Thank you, Prague. Where's the slide rule?
Ooh, Terry.
Trying to see, I was just trying to show.
Well, the whole system, yeah. Again, this is a contract.
There we go.
Bruce. What Mr. Groom is suggesting is the layout of the building will be where those red mark is. That's what the suggested layout is. And after talking to Chief Odell, what they were suggesting was for the fire trucks to go in, and they will be staged north-south. So they will come from the south, go into the bay, and when they are responding to a call, they will go north on York Street. So in that way, they will not be in the traffic. And the building will be moved a little bit to the east, and in that way, they are away from the traffic there also. And the next one, that's what he said before and after. It was just a schematic design site layout. This is the reason why we are going through it. You see how the freeze and thaw, the CMU is going through. That's just some pictures which Mr. Groom had put in together for us. Some details. I think that's all we had on there. Yep. And this is one of the fire stations which they have done and they're very proud of. This is the one on border. This is on border. Yes. This is the one which is on border. And they were Ricketts Construction were the contractors on this. They did this one and one on Country Club station number 4. That's all we have.
This project has a estimated cost of about $1 million, and we won't know until we really get into the design where that's going to be. And we have a total professional fees of $84,840, which is roughly 8.5% of what we think that total project is going to cost. So we feel like that's a very appropriate amount of money to be paying for the design work. Again, these are all people we've either worked with, we know, they're Muskogee people, and we think this team is the one that can get this fire station built. So we recommend approval. Again, Terry is here if you have any questions for him, or Prague and I will try to answer them.
Thank you, Mike.
Prague, have you considered the shape that older building's in, putting it under some kind of a historical site banner? Kind of.
That building right now, sir.
Where is that tongue?
Would not.
In which cheek?
In the rough section.
I'm pulling your leg. Mr. Groom's business and Mr. Ricketts I've dealt with them on occasion before, and the engineering jobs like this are their expertise, and I've got all the confidence in the world of them. And of course, the team that they're going to use to support in Muskogee as well. I'm familiar with all of them, and I think it's a good group of people.
Wasn't at one time we were looking at an alternative site?
Well, that's what Chief Odell would probably been able to answer, but he did look at many, many sites. Him and Roy and I actually discussed some of the properties in the area, and I don't think he could come up with anything, Councilman, but I can't answer that specifically for him. I know we did come down to this site. How it was determined to come back to it, I don't know.
Mike, are we going to have to negotiate with ODOT for a DPS rather for a portion of that lease that we have with that site, or will that be determined based upon the site plan once it's finished?
Right, and that's
Okay.
when we go in there and do those preliminary things that we have to do to prepare the site, especially the civil boundary.
Okay.
That will determine that. We think we're all in our property. But we really need those documents to assure that. And if we're not, then we'll just have to deal with it. But we think there's plenty of ground there to build it. We're gonna move it back from the street as far as we can. We're talking about, one of the factors that we didn't like about it being there was the fact that they've got to go out onto York Street. But there are some traffic signal technologies that can be put in place, and I'm sure that's a site where they're gonna need to be. So we'll try to incorporate that into it, make it as safe as possible for them coming out of there and safe for the public as possible.
I would just like for us to, before we enter into the design phase, that we really make sure that we look at every aspect of our community to make sure, we're talking about building a fire station, and we really need to do scope and design of our community. Where's our growth going? Where are we looking at? We really look at our community. Where is our needs assessment? Not because that's where it is, that's where we want to rebuild it, but we really look at where is our needs assessment in our community and where is that future need going to be, and we really make sure we got the right location before we start doing design and development. So I just make sure we really get down into that before we start doing it, because what we don't want to do is start doing design and development, because once we spend that $84,000, we're going to go, that's where we designed it to go, and so I just make sure that we really do diligence, because I think this is the right way of going, but let's really make sure that all our homework is done on that is the correct location for us to have our next fire station in the city of Muskogee.
And I think as we go forward with that, as staff, we can support Chief Odell with some documentation that will help provide that information to him. I know George, in the past, had done some work for Walt, and I don't remember exactly, but you identified fire boundaries and zones and where the fire stations were located. We can get all that back out and revisit that because I completely understand. You don't want to put a fire station in and then the town develop in another area and be short of fire protection.
Yeah.
So
and the firemen are the one. I'm just asking that 90,000-mile question, but they need to answer that. But before we start doing design and development of that fire station, let's please make sure and ask that way out question: where are we moving? Where are we going? Where is that next fire station need to be built? Because ultimately, that's where one is, but where does it really need to be for our future of our community?
Oh, we absolutely understand that, and we'll give Chief Odell all the support he needs to get that answer.
To follow up on what Mr. Johnson was saying, I've got an observation and then a question for Terry. But my thoughts were a new station probably ought to be moved. And I was worrisome that the cost of a potential site would be discouraging. And an observation I'll make is long term, if we reverted this property to the cemetery, what we could make on per plot sales would more than cover what another property might cost. My next question is, if we do the design build on this site, and I think this site has a few challenges. If we were to find a piece of land that had semi-suitable ground, because you never know what you run into, that was flat, would your design efforts on this project, if we were to pull your legs out from under you and say, well, we've decided that we want to go north of Shawnee and we found a plot of land here, we're going to buy something from the college or whatever it is that we decide, can a good portion of your design build still be utilized?
Yes, basically it would only affect the civil part of the design, which is storm drainage and the traffic arrangement, how it gets on and off the traveled way. So, the building would be designed pretty much the same way.
And it would be the
It
geotech.
might change the foundation because we'd have some different geotech results.
Yeah.
But we might have better geotech results. Because we've, I guess, well, you're aware, to make council aware, there's going to be a lot of fill and pier
There's
on
going to
the,
be some fill there.
on
yes.
the end of this property. But
And we've also got the demolition cost.
To-
But that may be on the future anyway, if the building can't be used.
right, and from the pictures I was teasing about, maybe not. But I've got some ideas about partial use of that building if it were to go to the cemetery, and maybe that works, and maybe it doesn't. But anyway, I think Mr. Johnson's spot on about building a brand new, expensive facility. Let's not let a couple of $100,000 in land costs be the forefront of this decision, and if the city's concerned about the extra cost of the land, I think we can come up with some avenues to make it all work and in the long term be the best interest all around for the city. So if there could be some last minute, let's be sure this is what we want to do, I agree with Mr. Johnson.
I have one question. Do we have a funding source for this possible building? Other than the fireman's equipment fund? 'Cause
It's equipment and capital needs. You
I
got the
would
same
rather
text I
not get
did.
into some of that. Because didn't we set that aside for the training center and all that kind of stuff, and that kind of what the money was for?
Training center was a grant.
But their equipment is to purchase equipment with, not a fire station, correct?
That is up in the air. The text of the ordinance says capital needs or equipment.
Okay, I just don't want to shorten any of our needs for equipment later by building a building.
You got the same text I did. Yeah.
Yes.
But that was where we had planned on originally funding it, because our idea was that there would be about 2 years of funding that would be needed based upon the preliminary estimate, which evidently has gone much higher, because I think the preliminary estimate we had from Mr. Ricketts was $700,000.
Yeah, it's been up and down.
Okay.
May I make a suggestion? We're talking about authorizing the manager to negotiate a contract.
Right.
It doesn't have to be site-specific, so we could move forward with that.
I agree with that. And that's why I wanted to ask.
Another problem, though, if I might, and I want to address something that you said as well, Councilor Kale. One of the things that we had done last year was to apply for a grant from the City of Muskogee Foundation. If you remember, that was denied. We can, of course, attempt to do that as well. And one of the things, and I don't know whether the foundation has any interest in doing it again, but one of the things that they will require is site plans. So we will need those for this, for a purpose to seek funding. It would certainly be helpful.
And if we went back to the foundation with a solid payback method or something like that, they may be a little more interested.
Yes, or some kind of match rather than 100% funding one way or the other. On the sale of the property for cemetery purposes, a portion of that would have to go to the cemetery care fund. So there'd be some concern of whether we'd be able to make our funding back. So that's something we need to look at. I think it's 12%, 12.5%.
And that's fine. And not to turn this meeting into something it should be turned into, but there would be all the reason in the world for premium prices on these, on this upfront York Street with some different concepts, and naturally a portion of that would have to go to the cemetery for long-term maintenance. But the premium portion could go towards the cemetery's not paying for the land or what have you. So I think that could all be worked out in a common sense manner.
Sure. But I just wanted to point that out.
No, and I thought that all along.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
So we're trying to authorize the manager to negotiate a contract that is for design only, not site-specific at this point. We can continue to move forward with that, and then we can regroup on the site itself. And I would lean on manager for a little direction there on how to go about that. I don't want to answer for the fire chief because he's not here, but definitely want to make sure.
that's problematic. I would be fine about recommending this to move to city council with no action, so we could get the fire chief here to answer a number of your questions.
Okay.
Okay, so we're, no action taken on this item?
Mr. Chairman,
We can move forward with that recommendation.
And then,
Either way you
and
wanna
then,
do it.
and then council can, with chief here, can make a decision that night.
Yeah, of course.
'Cause I see the need to get started.
And the decision is only the authorization.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and that was my point. We still don't have to be specific on the site right then.
Right.
And we can start determining where we're gonna go with that, whatever that takes. And in the meantime, as staff, we can get the fire chief all the information he needs to support him for his decisions, and we can go forward with it like that.
Then after
That
talking
way
to
it keeps it
him,
moving, and it's still.
I can grab
and it
Mr.
still gets
Johnson, we can
council's-
drive around town.
I have no problem with moving forward with it as far, it's just when we pick a site, and that's really up to the city. We just need to make sure that when they determine that is the best decision for the city of Muskogee.
And for this quadrant of town, and for the type of building that's going, the new buildings and the big buildings and things that are happening in this quadrant, the fire station is important. And I don't want to say any fire station's more important than the others, but I guarantee you this one is important, wherever it is.
Absolutely.
I live behind it. It's real.
Sure.
Because the selection of this item, I mean, it needs to move forward, but, when the determination of that site is gonna depend on, part of this needs to be determined. I mean, there's some preliminaries of a plot and giving you some preliminary numbers that needs to be done and go, okay, yeah, this is the preliminary concept. Some of that needs to be done now where kind of some budgetary numbers. So I can see this team kind of needs to be put together even for some preliminary numbers where they can look at another site and go, well, this is the preliminary numbers on this other site. So I can see a team needs to be brought together and put together right now where they can look at future sites.
Absolutely. You've got to look at turning movements, weight capacities, water sewer,
Correct. Correct.
there's just all kinds of issues. So understand, I think we have what we need as staff, this
Mr.
direction.
Did you?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Sure.
I remember it was last year, wasn't it, Roy? When we went out there to the fire station with Chief Tatum
It
on
was,
this.
yes.
And we come up with some issues, and that, like Councilman, you said Councilman Johnson, Councilman McHale. Thing Chief Odell at that time said, this thing the fire station needs to be moved. And a lot of like that traffic situation, that was a big deal out there. Also the railroad.
That's my biggest
That was
concern.
that was a big concern. So that was just some issues, because I went out there the very first time with Roy on that, and those were big concerns. So that's all I have to say. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Van. What's the pleasure of this committee?
Make a motion, we move forward with this item.
So is that for approval?
I make a motion, we move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Could we encourage the chief to be here Monday night?
The chief
I'm waiting
said-
for him to finish so I can vote. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dan.
All right.
Odell, having, I guess, some gallstone or gallbladder
He was
issues.
just ill.
And he said that he could be here today, but he really was under the weather. And I told him that if any issues came up, it would probably be moved to Monday night, and then he could address them then.
Okay.
So he
Item
was-
number 5.
he's willing to come, but he really didn't feel well.
Discuss and take possible action on eStar Health System proposal to connect their north campus
Thank you, Terry.
located at the intersection of Harris Road and Main Street to the City of Muskogee sanitary sewer system, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart.
Thought I would have a representative from eStar and Holloway here to assist me, but I guess I'm on my own.
As always.
So I'll present the case for them to give it to the city so I can accept it, or this pollution control.
Okay.
What we're asking for today is just authorization on whether to move forward with this project or not. So what you have in front of you right now is conceptual. There's nothing in here that's concrete at this point. eStar Hospital is out on the corner of Main and Harris Road, and they have a sanitary sewer lagoon system, and they're constantly fighting it. In the few meetings that I've had with the new hospital administration, They've always asked if the city would be willing to take over their current system, which they're out in the county, and we don't want that lagoon system, and we're, basically not interested in it. But we also want to be good partners with the hospital, and we're trying to work some road projects around the hospital on the west side of town. So this subject was talked about on many different occasions. I told them if they would get with Holloway, Updike, and Bellin and could come up with some kind of a proposal where we could put a sewer system in that would tie to the city system, that we might be willing to accept it, or willing to bring it to city council and recommend acceptance, might be a better way to phrase that. So they started working on that. Now, when those conversations were going on, that's when we were also having the same conversations with Jay Updike. I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about shutting several of the lift stations down on the east side of town, and we were actually talking about putting a master lift station out pretty near the hospital out there, and some of those conversations brought forth all this dialogue. So anyway, the hospital, Bob Stafford got with Clay McAlpine with Holloway, and they've put forth a letter of proposal, which I put in your packet. We read that letter, and as staff, we really weren't quite as acceptable to that. So we met them on site, and we discussed a lot of different options. One is that that lift station out there would remain private if it came to the city, something that we could recommend to you. The lift station would remain private. They would still own it, but we would do a maintenance agreement on it like we do under ordinance or section 82-256 of the city ordinance, and that's where we do the individual grinder pumps at residential properties, where they actually own them, but we maintain them. They have to pay for whatever repair goes on to them. We felt like that might be an appropriate way to do this. We also felt like the income that we looked at that would bring in, and I'm sorry, I forgot that. Prog, what was the annual income? Is it 25? Or yeah, it's $12,000 a year. It wasn't really a lot of money, and for what the expense could be to operate that system, I didn't feel like would be fair to the public. That's why we looked at it as an individual ownership. They have, if you looked at there, they were going to give us an access agreement. They were going to put in a roadway to their lift station. They're willing to put almost all new parts in the lift station prior to us taking acceptance. They're willing to pay the electrical bill. They will have to get with the county, and we told them we would work with the county. And I've actually called Ken Doak and asked him if he would be acceptable to running a sewer line down the county right-of-way on Main Street to where it ties into the city system, right about the city limits line out there, which is about 4,300 feet of new 4-inch PVC. Of course, that would be a force main. But what you have before you is something that staff, and that's Bill Aguirre, George Kingston, myself, Prog, worked out with the hospital administrators in Holloway as a rough proposal that we could support. And what we put on the agenda today was an item to see if council would be willing to let us move forward with this into a formal proposal or agreement for sewer service to the hospital. We didn't want the hospital to go to the expense of hiring Holloway and doing all the plans and getting the surveys and all that until we were sure that we had something that the city and the hospital could work out. We didn't want them to waste their money, is really the bottom line. So what I'm asking for today is authorization to move forward with this, to formalize some type of agreement, to bring back to you for your authorization.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
I've got a couple.
May or may not be able to answer them. I was hoping Holloway and the hospital could be.
And the manager might have to answer a couple. Has there been any talk at all in these discussions of incorporating that area into the city?
We looked at annexing them in. Gary, help me. It's been it was when John Vincent was here. And the area out there did not want to come in, if I remember that correctly.
That, and also that time it was on rural water too, and we had to make some changes to that district boundaries on the rural water. I believe, and I may be wrong, but I want to say there is a gap also between the city limits and where their property starts.
Oh, there is?
Or at least at one time there was. And then it wasn't actually abutting the city limits, so we'd have to have consent from anyone in between. But we probably need to research that and see what situation it sits today.
My next question is, are services out there taxed at county and state taxes only?
If they're outside of the city limits, yes.
And then my next question would be, I wonder how much revenue the city could make in sales taxes out there, and would that change this whole conversation into a different one?
Well, it would change it to a different conversation, I'm sure.
Where are we actually talking, Mike? Where's the area that's
The hospital is located on the corner of Main and Harris Road. It is roughly a half mile
out
outside
that
the
way?
city
Yeah,
limits.
yeah, okay.
You know, we'd have a lot of area that we would take in that.
There was also some discussion, and I think it may have occurred when this hospital was owned by a different entity, and we had some issues of whether the city could issue some support based on our ordinance when it was owned by a different entity.
You're right on target.
And that was one of the reasons why it didn't come in as well. And then we had some conversations with, I had some conversations with one of the attorneys for Capella, and I think there was some issues related to that ordinance as well, since we'd be bringing them into the city limits, if that would qualify as a new hospital for purposes of our ordinance. Do you remember having those? Yes.
But none of that applies today. I mean, isn't this hospital now owned by?
The
Same
people?
one, yes, yes. Well, we're talking, there's two different things. One, any new development requires a certificate of convenience. Was that convenience and necessity?
Consent, yeah.
Second was, would we be violating the non-compete agreement with Capella if we provided any level of support? That part, I agree, doesn't matter since they're owned by the same entity. But for purposes of providing the sanitary sewer wouldn't qualify under the certificate of necessity as it relates to the ordinance on that. So, one, I don't think it matters for what we're being asked today for purposes of the certificate of necessity. And second, as for the non-compete agreement, we wouldn't be violating that because it's owned by the same entity.
My interests are, if the tax revenue makes sense, then maybe it makes sense for us to
bring them in.
Bring them in, and well, by the way, we'll upgrade this lift station and we'll do it this way. It changes what we offer and what we can do. And it also opens the door for future development for the city. Someday that's going to come in. Maybe it doesn't need to come in now, but I'd sure be interested as to what kind of revenue that may or may not be outside of that.
Most of those are service industries, service related, of course, but
No sales tax on that.
yeah, no sales tax on that. But there may be some on supplies that are sold out there. I'm not that familiar with whether there's a pharmacy out there or any of those kinds of things. So,
I think that discussion was held back when John was here, and what we would take in would not pay for the infrastructure improvements that would be needed.
okay.
But Councilman Kell also made the other point, but it had potential for growth. And if it was taken in, that was the carrot, I think, that we were looking at that time. Now, I don't know if any of that's changed, but that conversation wasn't even entertained now. It's just to provide sanitary sewer.
Well, and I know in one of the other conversations I had, they were interested in us repealing that ordinance, at least at some to some level, whether it be whole or in part.
I wonder if we might put together a group to kind of look at this and discuss it and
see if it's something we want to do.
and whether it's something we want to do or not.
They're interested
I'm
in it as
open
well.
to being as accommodating as we can naturally.
Sure.
Naturally, but if it's beneficial to all of us, we might, and it might not be worth it at all. But I'd like to know if it is.
Of course. Absolutely. And I think we'd need to address that provision in the ordinance, maybe create an exception that says if we're bringing in a pre-existing facility through annexation, then it may be exempt from the certificate of necessity. There are a number of things that we can do if all parties think it's a good deal and want to do it. So
Okay.
we can do that.
Gary, would we have to amend some of our I guess, our rules our rules or whatever they call them, when we annex that in, since it doesn't touch a city property?
Well, if it doesn't touch a city property, the best way to resolve it is get consent from the abutting property owners, which we'd ask them to go after. There is still a clause, I think, where it's 51% of the property that may be
100% now, isn't it?
in there.
No, it was, and then they changed it again.
There's another percentage that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's every other year it's changed.
Yeah.
And I think last time we looked was maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I think at that case, you could do it without consent if you had a larger portion, and then without consent, you had to do a 10-year service plan.
Right.
And then with consent, you did not.
Correct. Yeah.
It may have changed, since the
I
legislature.
think that's the way it
One
reads.
time it did change where you had to have
That's
basically
it.
100%
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It had to be 100%.
Because we tried to annex in several areas during that time.
That was the 2010-11 amendments, I think.
Yes, yes.
I remember that.
Yes.
All right. So, really, what you're asking for, Mike, is just start on a formal proposal, and I think staff has.
I don't want
direction.
to give the hospital any direction unless I know the city council is.
Interested in doing
Yeah, I
this,
don't
or-
want them to waste their money.
Okay.
So maybe this is something that we do in conjunction with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So probably no action, staff will take direction.
I don't think they're going to be disappointed if we don't pass this today, because this has been an issue going for a long time. And I think if they knew there was discussions to try to move it forward, I think they would be happy with that decision.
And we can indicate that
Oh,
we
yeah.
want,
Oh, no,
we
I'll-
want to help them one way or the other.
Yeah, that's what I'll tell them. That what I got from council was that it was positive to move this forward, but still there were some questions that need to be resolved.
Okay. Staff's got direction. So no action on this one. Recognizing citizens wishing to speak to chair and committee. Since no one signed up, we are adjourned.